Okay, good afternoon, and you're on to grade 9 mathematics, and we're handling algebra, and then our topic of focus will be change of subject of formula. We've started this topic already, and we will be considering exercise 6D. We're taking question 1 to 15, and our focus for today will be to move from chapter 16. And let's see how far we'll go, because the most important thing is trying to understand what we are doing. You're welcome to Mamu with Jarvis, and it is the grade 9 mathematics experience. So let's go straight away. Our textbook of reference remains the New General Mathematics for grade 9 or JS3, and we are on page 54 of our textbook, looking at exercise 6D, question number 16. Let's hit the road. So we look at exercise 6D, and then we'll start off with question 16. That will be 2x minus y equal to d, and then we are required to make x and y the subject of the formula. Okay, so we'll try to solve that question now. 2x minus y equal to d, and we are told to make x emphasis, and after that make y emphasis. So the first thing we need to do here is to look at what don't we need here. If we're going to look for x, or we're going to make x the subject of the formula, we do not need y. So what do we do? To be 2x equal to d, and then I will add up the additive inverse to the other side, and that will be d plus y. If d were negative on the left hand side, across the equality it becomes what? Positive. Last week we were using the concept of servant and what? King. He's a servant here. When he goes to the other village, he becomes a king. So that will give you 2x equal to 2 and d plus y. The next thing you want to do is to clear off the coefficient of x, and that we will do, and that will give us x equal to d plus y all over 2. So that's for the first one, and I put an asterisk there to tell us that that is the first emphasis being talked about. Now we want to look for y. So the first thing you need to do is to say 2x minus y equal to d. Remember, one of the things we take note of when we solve problems here is that the coefficient, rather the unknown must be positive. So how do we do that? It will be wise for you to say 2x will be equal to what? D plus y. This crosses equality and the servant becomes a king. At this point, we rewrite. Why are we rewriting? Because we always keep the subject on the left hand side of the equation. So that will be what? D plus y equal to what? 2x. That will be d plus y equal to 2x. So at this point, what don't we need? We don't need d. So d, who is a king in his village, will cross over to the other side and become a servant. As such, we're going to have that y will be equal to 2x minus d. And this becomes the answer for the second aspect of the question. Okay. Alright, let's go to question 17. The question says P equal to 4D. P is equal to 4D, and the emphasis is to try to make D the subject of the formula. So what do you do? Now, the first thing you do, which is the standard practice in solving change of subject of formula, is to rewrite. We're rewriting because the subject we want to make is on our right hand side. So the first thing we want to do is to try to make this d move it to the left hand side. So that will be what? 4d equal to what? P. With that done, the next thing we want to do is to try to make the coefficient of what? D to be 1. How best can we do that? Than to divide by what? 4. And this means that D will be equal to P over 4. And that takes care of question 17. Now the question on the board says C is equal to 2 pi r. What is the emphasis? The emphasis is on what? R. We are to make R the subject of the formula. So as such, we will need to rewrite this so that we have our right hand side as our left and our left hand side as our right. So that will be what? 2 pi r equal to C. Now, what is the coefficient of R? The coefficient of R, now look at what you have here. This is essentially 2 pi times R equal to C. So what I don't need on my left hand side is what? 2 pi. I'll divide both sides by 2 pi. And that will mean that R will not be equal to C over 2 pi. So R equal to C over 2 pi will now suffice as changing the subject of formula from C to R for question number 18. So you may want to check that and see whether your answer is in order. So here we have question 18 and we're required to look for theta. The first step for solving this is to rewrite because the subject is on the right hand side of the board. So we need to bring it to the left hand side of the board. And that will be theta plus 273 equal to t. Now with this done, you discover that we do not need 273. So how do you address that? You would address that by moving this out. And when we move 273 across the equality to the other side, it becomes a negative, a king being demoted to become a servant. So theta will now be equal to t minus what? 273 degrees. And that takes care of question 18. Now, we're trying to handle question 20 where we have W equal to VI. VI is not Victoria Island, so don't think we're in Lagos, we're still in Port Harcourt. So W equal to VI, and the first thing you want to do is to convert, is to change, move your to the right so that your right hand side becomes your left hand side. So that will mean VI equal to W. So if we want to emphasize I, we divide by V. If we want to emphasize I, we divide by V because I becomes the subject and V becomes the coefficient. So we divide both sides by the coefficients and we have that what? I is equal to W over V, all capital letters. Now if we want to move the emphasis to V, we will then take from this position VI equal to W and divide both sides by what? I. And that will be V equal to W over I. And that takes care of the second one. So we now have two emphases. Subject 1 being I, and that's the formula we're going to get. And subject 2 being V, and that's what we're going to get. So that takes care of question number 20. Now, how do we handle that? Here we are told to, at one point in time, emphasize arrow, and at another point in time, emphasize L. So, how do we solve this? The first thing we need to do is to rewrite. You notice that rewriting is becoming a recurrent term in this matter. We must always rewrite first. We must always do what? Rewrite first. And such pi RL equal to A. So from this point, if we want to get R, we will divide both sides by what? Pi L. I don't need pi, I don't need L. So I'll divide both sides by what? Pi L. Please remember that pi RL will mean pi times R times L. So there are terms that are being multiplied. So if I don't need any one of them, I divide. That's the way you clear multiplication. You clear multiplication by doing what? Dividing. So if that is done, it means that R will be equal to A over pi L. That's for this. So we can, by extension, try to solve for L. Pi RL equal to A. And to get L, we will then divide both sides by what? Pi R. Not forgetting what we had talked about earlier, that this would mean multiplying the three different terms we're considering. As such, this will now be L equal to A over pi R. And that will take care of looking for question number 21, which says, at a point in time, make R the subject of the formula. At another time, make L the subject of the formula. Now in question 22, we are told to make L, B, and H the subject of the formula. So let's look at that. The first thing we need to do is to rewrite. That will be L, BH equal to V. So we will then divide both sides by where do we want the emphasis to be? If we are looking for L, we'll divide both sides by BH. L becomes what? V over BH. Now, when we're looking for B, we'll divide both sides by what? LH. And that will mean that what? B will be equal to what? V over LH. I see that. Now, if we're looking for, what about if we're looking for H? We will then divide both sides by what? LB. How am I right with that? LB. And as such, H will now be equal to V over LB. The learning point here is that when you multiply by three terms, you have a situation where the other terms become what? Coefficients. They become what? Coefficients. So you treat them as what? Coefficients. Alright? What are we required to do here? The first thing now is to rewrite. Now, let me just reemphasize this. Why are you rewriting? You're essentially rewriting because the subject you are looking for is on the right hand side, and the right order is to bring the subject to the left hand side. So understand why you rewrite. If you look at the question, the subjects we are told to look for are already on the right hand side, is that not? So we need to rewrite them so that they come to the left hand side. So that will give us 2 pi RH equal to A. 2 pi RH equal to what? A. So what do you do now? Let's now assume that our emphasis is arrow, the subject. What don't we need? We don't need this, we don't need this, we don't need this. So what do? You divide both sides by what you don't need. I've just gotten that wisdom. You divide both sides by what you don't need. Because remember that 2 pi RH is interpreted as 2 times pi times r times h. So if I don't need this and this, I divide by what? 2 pi and what? R and h. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here. And that will be what? R equal to what? A over 2 pi h. So what do you have? This will now take care of the first one. Now, what now happens if we are interested in getting h? So if we're interested in getting h, we will start by writing this again. And then we divide by 2 pi and r. Because we need h. And so we go 2 pi r over 2 pi r. And h will now be equal to a over 2 pi r. That takes care of that question. Did you get it?
Yes.
Alright. In this question, we're told to look for v and t. Now, something rather strange is in this question. You have half times this. Because I'm trying to introduce the idea, this is half times vt over 1. Please let's watch, because this is one aspect that can throw your balance. S will now be equal to what? Vt over 2. Numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. You get that? So this will give you S equal to Vt over 2. At this point, what do you do? Some people may say rewrite. I agree with you. If you do that, you are correct. So that will be what? Vt over 2 equal to S. What do you do next? You multiply both sides by 2. Why are you doing that? Because you want to clear the 2 from the denominator side. Some rather fast students might decide to say, okay, this is dividing here, so what would it do here? It will multiply. Because the opposite of multiplication is what? Division. And the opposite of addition is what? Subtraction. You mustn't forget that. As such, I can now go ahead with my endgame Ironman suit and have that Vt is equal to 2S. I'll have that what? Vt will be equal to what? 2S. Okay. So at this point, we're going to have that what? Vt is equal to 2S. Now, if we make V the subject of the formula, emphasis on V, I will have to divide by T. Why am I dividing by T? Because if I make V the emphasis, T becomes my coefficient. It's always subject-coefficient relationship. So if this becomes the subject, this becomes the coefficient. And the rule is you divide by the coefficient. To clear the coefficient, you divide by the coefficient so that the subject can live long. So V becomes what? 2S over T. First one taken care of. So what happens in the second one? We have that Vt is equal to 2S. Now, our emphasis is on T, so we don't need V. So we divide both sides by V, and T will be equal to 2S over V. And that becomes your answer. Now, here the emphasis is to make B and H the subject of the formula. So from here, I want to change my approach a little. I talked about rewriting, but I don't want to rewrite. What's my denominator here? 2 bags of cement. The whole requires 2 bags of cement, or 2 bags of cement. So I need to get 2 Dangote certified bags of cement rather, to take care of the job. So what do? This will become what? 2A equal to BH. Now, notice what I'm doing here, because sometimes order is not too important in mathematics. Quoting a famous character in the Matrix, some rules can be bent, others can be broken. Sometimes in maths, because I cannot tell how you would remember in the examination hall, it will not be nice for me to say you must always follow like this. No, sometimes I haven't talked about the rules. I also try to teach you how you can bend them, bend reality a little, and then bring reality back to full. So that being said, it means that 2A will be equal to what? BH. It is at this point, as a student, I can now do what? Rewrite. If I rewrite before this, I'm correct. If I rewrite after it, I'm also correct. So you don't need to put yourself under unnecessary pressure. So this will be BH equal to 2A. Emphasis on B means that H is the coefficient. Listen, emphasis on B means that H is the what? Coefficient. So I divide by H. And that will be B equals to 2A over H. Emphasis on H means that B is the what? Coefficient. So that will be BH over H over A are equal to 2A. I divide both sides by B. And what I'm going to have is, sorry about that, BH over B will be equal to 2A over B, and H will be equal to 2A over B. So that takes care of that answer. Okay? Alright. In question 26, we are told to look for L, B, and H. Hope I'm spot on that. Alright, so the first thing we do, will require 2 bags of cement to fill this hole. So that will be 2B equal to LBH. What do you notice now? You notice something interesting. Now you're moving from having to actually multiply to do the work mentally. That's the objective. Your ability to do what? Do the work mentally. Alright, so from here, I can now rewrite. And I'm going to have this. So what do you have next? If I want to emphasize L, I'll divide both sides by BH. And L will be equal to 2V over BH. Just to cancel for purpose of emphasis. And if I want to emphasize B, I divide both sides by LH. And that will give us B equal to 2V over LH. And also if I want to emphasize H, I will then divide both sides by LB, and that will mean that H will be equal to 2V over LB. Is that clear? So the answer becomes this, and this. So that's much we can take on our class on change of subject of formula, and I want to trust that students will find this class useful. In our next meeting, we'll be looking at substitution. I did say that I'm taking a different approach to this topic, taking you through this change of subject before going into substitution, which I feel is the right order in teaching this topic. Alright, so see you. Mamu will return. Thank you.